We've all seen the headlines. The world's not safe. You can't trust anyone. They aren't like us. So we know that we're living in a divided world, right? A world of them and us. A world where they don't look like us, they don't talk like us, and they certainly don't behave like us. And we know this because we've seen it with our own two eyes. In the newspaper headlines and the television reports, which tell us how divided and different the people of the world are. And even if those newspapers were to maybe exaggerate their headlines just a little bit, just to sell a few extra copies, well, that's okay, because we've always got Facebook, right? And we all know that everything we read on Facebook is completely true and accurate, isn't it? I've always been fascinated by the way our vision and our opinions of the world around us are shaped by the images we're presented. How a single photograph has the ability to shift opinions and change minds. It's that fascination which first led me to pick up a camera and become a photographer. And let me tell you, there's never been a better time to be a photographer. This, right now, will be the most recorded age in history. And the photographs that we take today are not just for sharing online in the hope that everybody will know we like them. These photographs will be viewed for generations to come. Future historians will study and examine those photographs as they try and understand our society and the contributions that we made to them. In many ways, the photographs that we take today will tell the stories of our age. But I can't help but wonder, what will those stories be? Will they really be stories of division? Are the people of the world really that different? That's something I've thought about often. And so a couple of years ago, I decided to try and find out. I decided to try and visit as many people as I could. I met people from dozens of countries, spanning 6 continents. People from Toronto to Tokyo, from Havana to Hanoi, and pretty much everywhere in between. This wasn't a predetermined voyage. I didn't have a planned route. This was a nomadic journey, driven largely by the stories I discovered. You see, there's something about viewing the world through the lens of a camera that forces you to look at things slightly differently. Something about framing a photograph that requires you to concentrate on the subject in front of you and take away all of the other distractions. And this experience allowed me to meet so many people from so many different backgrounds and cultures in such a short period of time, that I was able to explore humanity in a way that few other people have been able to do. And in the process, I learned what lies in the unexplored space between them and us. But that was much later into my journey. Believe it or not, the very first thing I learned from photographing people all over the world is that people really like having their photographs taken. Everywhere I went, on every continent, it seemed that all I had to do was say hello. And people would unleash their inner supermodel and start posing for photographs in the middle of the street and telling a complete stranger all about their daily lives. And that took me by surprise. I honestly expected people to be more resistant. So why did all these people allow a total stranger to capture their photograph? Well, it transpires simply that people all over the world are very cooperative, happy to offer their assistance if they can be of help. And I experienced this everywhere I went, but perhaps nowhere did it stand out for me more than in a small fishing village I discovered in the West African country of Ghana. There's nothing that can prepare you for the early morning chaos of Elmina. The noise as you approach this small fishing port can be unnerving. The cries of the boat captains as they jostle for position. The shouts of the traders as they argue over their prices. And the hustle of the workers as they run around carrying everything on their head. But what struck me most was the way that all of these people seemed to be working together in perfect harmony. By mid-morning, the coastline was lined with thousands of people helping to repair and organize the fishing nets, to pull the boats onto the safety of the shore, and generally working together for the greater good. This really brought home to me that, just like us, this community understood the value of working together. Talking of home, something else I was to discover as I traveled all over the world is that despite my desire to travel, for the vast majority of people, there's no place like home, even if home is in the middle of a disaster zone. In April 1986, an explosion at the Chernobyl power plant resulted in the worst nuclear disaster in history. In a matter of moments, thousands of square kilometers were left uninhabitable for at least 50,000 years to come. And even today, the threat of radiation is so severe that an exclusion zone of more than 3,500 kilometers is strictly enforced all around the plant, preventing people from entering. In the decades which have followed, nature has been busy reclaiming the towns and communities which were left behind. Today, trees grow in the middle of the town square that was once the center of the community. The fun fair lays abandoned, never to be enjoyed again. And the homework of the children still lies on the floor where it was left abandoned as the children fled. And yet, despite the ever-present threat of radiation poisoning, not everybody chose to leave. Scattered throughout the exclusion zone, I discovered dozens of mainly elderly residents who refused to leave. Known as the returners, they had struck an uneasy truce with the local authorities, fed up of trying to remove them from the zone. What I couldn't understand is why someone would choose to stay in an area that the rest of the world considered to be one of the most dangerous places on the planet. Because this is where my home is, Ivan, one of those returners, told me. And I hardly had time to say hello before it was explained to me that this was the house that he built with his own two hands, and he had no intention of leaving. And besides, he told me confidently, at 86 years of age, he had other things to worry about other than the radiation. But how did he manage when even the nearest food stores were many hours away? Simple, he told me, I grow all my own food before handing me a sample of his homegrown produce. It's only after I ate a few mouthfuls that it occurred to me that this was food grown in the most radioactive soil on the planet. Ivan just laughed at me. And he wasn't the only one who had chosen to stay. Throughout the exclusion zone, I found many others for whom the draw of home is too much to resist. It seems that just like us, for these people, home is where the heart lies, and nothing, not even 50,000 years of radiation, is going to force them to leave. Now, despite the damage that humanity seems determined to inflict on our planet, something else I discovered as I traveled was that our planet really is an amazing place. Just when I think I've seen everything, just when I think I've photographed everything, Mother Nature will surprise me once again. Whether it be the roar of Niagara Falls, or the peace of a beach in Iceland at 2 a.m. in the summertime when the sun never sets, or the solace of the ocean as the sun rises over the bay in Rio de Janeiro. or the tranquility of the Mauritian Sea. Our planet is an amazing place. And yet, even in the 21st century, I still found that there's too much sadness in the world. There's still too many people suffering with issues of mental health, of homelessness, of substance abuse. And for too many people, everyday life is still a battle. And yet, everywhere I traveled, I discovered people who were prepared to fight that battle. And nowhere did I discover this more than in New York City. Arriving in the Big Apple is not a subtle experience. New York is not demure. It's not shy. It's not retiring. It's big. It's bold. It's in your face, brash. It's a city where the American dream is not just an aspiration, it's a way of life. And Times Square is where that dream lives and breathes and explodes against a backdrop of neon lights. Every day, the stars of tomorrow descend on Times Square, seeking their fame and fortune by singing and dancing their hearts out in the hopes of being discovered. Happy to share their experiences with anyone who cares to say hello. I was to discover that behind every dream lies the reality of everyday life. It's a struggle, one of those hopefuls told me. I never seem to catch a break. So why do you carry on, I asked him. Why do you continue? Because one day I'm going to be a star, is what he told me, with total sincerity. And I believe him too. He was just biding his time, waiting to be discovered. And this sense of hope, this sense of optimism in the face of everyday challenges, was something I discovered everywhere I went. It seems that just like us, the people in New York have their own dreams and aspirations for the future. And the more people I met and the more places I visited, the more that those headlines screaming out about the division in the world and how different the people were seemed so at odds from my experiences. Because I was learning that it wasn't language which divides us. It's not culture or religion which separates us. I learned that what lies in the unexplored space between them and us is perception. We are different because we think we are different. But the more people I met, the more I realized that this was a false perception. Human beings are the same all over the world. The people I met were happy to offer their assistance wherever and whenever they could. The people I met felt that home was where their heart lies. And the people I met had their dreams and aspirations for the future. But most of all, the people I met all over the world wanted nothing more than to belong. We all want to be one of us. So how do we achieve that? How do we go from a world of them and us to a world where there's only we? I believe the answer is simple. And it starts with a single word. It's a word that I realized I'd been using all over the world. That word is hello. Such a small word, such a simple word, and yet it's a word that allows total strangers to begin a conversation, and in so doing, cease to be strangers. And it's my hope that if only we can choose to use that word more often, the stories that we tell our future generations through the photographs that we capture today will not be stories of division, but stories of unity. Let those be the stories that we choose to share. So thank you, and hello.